A soldier-turned-high school teacher uses unconventional techniques to reach out to a class of impoverished pupils amid struggling with a greedy entrepreneur and his gang of combatants, as well as the authorities. A high school is in chaos, learners are underperforming and engaged in non-academic pursuits. Henry, a teacher with rusty writing skills but armed with the most informed fists and a steel heart, arrives to educate and motivate the students with his unusual teaching techniques. Just as the children are improving their work and reaping the benefits of the educational system, difficulty arises. Henry strives to tackle educational challenges through a combination of personality, honesty, comedy, intelligence, and kung fu. Spoiler ahead, watch out! Henry came back to Hong Kong after serving in the U.S. military for several years. He returns to his former school, Tak Chi Secondary, with the goal of continuing a teaching career. The principal notices that he has no teaching experience. However, after seeing a recommendation letter written by a higher-level authority, he gets hired. The principal tells Henry before he leaves that the class he was allocated to teach is among the most disastrous in the entire school. On the morning of his first day of school, Henry enters the classroom to find things completely disorganized. Some children are napping, singing, playing video games, and even cooking on a portable burner. Even after the teacher enters, they totally disregard him and resume their activities. Henry tried to grab their attention. Nevertheless, they pretended not to hear him. He leaves up trying to distract their attention and walks around the classroom talking about what they're currently doing. Those who are cooking are advised to eat less ramen since it includes excessive sodium. Similarly, he tells a gamer youngster about the radiation he may get from gazing at a screen all day. When the pupils finally begin paying attention to him, he presents himself and writes his name and phone number on the board. The pupils giggle simply because his handwriting is terrible. Soon, one of them calls him and demands him to leave the classroom, but Henry laughs this joke away. The children continue to ignore him while they carry on with whatever they are doing before he shows up. Henry has had enough, so he grabs a rubber band and a piece of chalk to activate the room's fire sprinkler. The students hurriedly move away to avoid getting soaked. He finally captures their complete attention and formally welcomes them into his classroom. After class, a team of 5 lowest-ranking students meets in the sports supplies room to smoke. The group's leader, Jack, has a crush on an A-grade student in a different class. The others notice him looking at her face and start to make fun of him. The group fights with the wealthy and privileged students on the school's basketball team. They enter the supply room and mock Jack, as they always do, because he is impoverished. Later, the basketball team continues to train, whereas Jack and the others watch from a distance. Jack rolls a bottle onto the court, causing the team's captain to lose his balance. Miss Liang, the school's English teacher, gives the group a detention despite their laughter. To escape being detained, they plot a prank on her and leave while she is cleaning her desk. At the same time, the principal is upset, considering the education board intends to withdraw 20% of their annual funding. Members of the board visit the school to observe how the financial resources are spent. At the same time, Henry walks into the classroom, wherein the students have set up a bucket of water to distract him, yet his reflexes are faster than the falling bucket, and he manages to throw it away. The fellow pupils who had planned to tease him are stunned. Henry requests Jack's packet of cigarettes, knowing he smokes. Jack simply hands him the pack, interested as to what he plans to do. Then Henry asks Zufa to list the 3 elements found in a cigarette. When he correctly answers the question, as a reward, he was able to skip class during the day. Everyone begins to knock on their desks, asking to skip class as well. When they come to a slowdown, he hands each of them a cigarette and instructs them to evaluate it. Henry understands that if he only emphasizes the impact on their health, they will not take it seriously. Opposed, he asks them about the consequences of smoking cigarettes and demonstrates how tar develops in their lungs. For the very first time, kids pay interest in the teacher while truly having an interest in understanding. After the bell sounds, he tells them to return the cigarettes, which they unwillingly do. That day in the cafeteria, the basketball team's captain provokes one of Jack's buddies, Bruce, to trip over his leg. This leads to a disagreement between the groups, which quickly evolves into a physical fight. They smash food and dishes at one another, damaging the establishment. Later, Henry gets to know that 5 children in his classroom ended up being temporarily suspended for causing the fight. Henry finds Jack beating his opponent in the corridor and intervenes. When prompted to calm down, Jack blames the school for being unjust because the wealthy students received no punishments. That day, after school, Henry looks over the files of each of the kids to find out a bit more about them. The first guy is Zufa, the son of a Pakistani immigrant immigrant who is often discriminated against due to his race. He frequently gets accused of stealing by police officers. Zufa's life goal is to become a musician. The second student is a girl named Danon. She was always disappointing her father, who had hoped for a son. Danon has spent her entire life attempting to obtain her father's respect. She also trimmed her hair short and pretended to be a boy. Nonetheless, her father isn't concerned about her, but he treats her little brother extremely well. Then there are two brothers, Bruce and Chris. Their mom ran away with a man when they were still kids, leaving their father becoming an alcoholic. Bruce developed an addiction to computer games in order to avoid reality, while Chris worked tirelessly at a grocery shop to make ends meet for the family. Finally, Henry is unable to find any important information regarding Jack's family history. In the following scene, Jack works as an employee in a restaurant. John Ying, an MMA professional, enters the restaurant alongside his business partners. When John Ying is not paying attention, Jack grabs his fancy lighter and is captured. John Ying's guys beat him up while he examines Jack's identity. After learning that he is a student, he pays him some cash and provides him with a job as their food delivery man. Henry gets to Zufa's house and discovers him fleeing from his father and associates after stealing a ticket. He initially supports him, but once he discovers why he is being searched for, he supports the father's side. Then he and Zufa meet up at a bridge. Henry performs with a street band to encourage Zufa to do anything he wants. Seconds later, Zufa joins him as he sings in public for the very first time since getting teased in school years ago. In the meantime, Bruce and Chris's father arrives home late, as usual, and instructs them to grab him a beer from the shop. When the brothers decline, he screams at them to leave his house. The next day, Henry talks with their father and then encourages him to go to rehabilitation for his and his son's own good. Meanwhile, Danon's father surprises her with a package of makeup and requests her to behave like a girl for one time. Danon is infuriated with him for constantly making her feel incompetent. She applies makeup to her younger brother before getting out of the house with the car key. She prepares to drive out in her father's automobile when Henry stops her just in time. He informs her that driving without a license is against the law and offers an option. Following that, they visit a go-kart course. Henry also brings her father and has them race. Throughout the race, ultimately end up beyond the track. Danon's go-kart gets struck by a vehicle, but she is able to avoid it. Her father, unaware of this, sobs in sorrow over his daughter's death. Danon realizes he loves her and embraces him. The next day at school, Bruce and Chris were sent with a group to a rehabilitation clinic to interview a recovering alcoholic. They are astonished to learn that the person they are supposed to interview is their father. The kids inquire as to how he first began drinking. The man responds that he loved his wife sincerely, but she dropped him at the most difficult period in his life. As a result, he began to drink and forget about the two children he was responsible for. The dad does not admit that Bruce and Chris are his children, but he apologizes to them. The brothers end up crying. Jack has begun to work more successfully for the MMA, John Ying. He offers Jack a large sum of money for drugging a fighter's drink ahead of the upcoming game. Jack is nervous, but feels obligated to accept the offer that is made. On the actual day of the battle, John Ying encourages a fighter, but bets on his defeat. Jack puts drugs in the fighter's drink, but gets detected. Before he can blame John Ying, he gets assaulted and put inside a locker. A while later, Henry comes and questions the fighters whether they had observed his student. Jack, who is inside the storage unit, screams for aid. When Henry realizes he is being locked, he attacks them and effortlessly defeats them. When the combatants arrive, the situation becomes more heated up, but Henry overcomes their attacks with ease. In the end, he knocks down their best fighter, who is scheduled to combat in a few minutes. In the following scene, they appear at a hospital, where Henry is getting treatment for the injuries he suffered. The news reaches television, and Henry becomes recognized as the man who beat up an experienced fighter to save his student. His reputation at school develops, and pupils begin to appreciate him. In contrast to their previous behavior, they even stand up to formally welcome him to the class. A flashback reveals that Henry was a prankster at school. He even tossed water balloons at a pupil who performed on the piano for the parents in a ceremony. Later, he fought with the same pupil, breaking his hand. He was suspended after the fight. Beginning that day, pupils concentrate when Henry speaks in class and work hard to prepare for the approaching college admission exam. Everyone is doing well, except Bruce, who has become attached to drugs. It turns out that Bruce has begun using drugs. He performs poorly on the mock entrance test due to his lack of focus. Henry offers to help him, but Bruce becomes extremely disappointed over time. He jumps off the balcony at his residence. He is brought to the hospital and enters into a coma. The media interprets the story, blaming the school and Henry for everything that Bruce did. The school board interviews Henry and decides to terminate his teaching license. After he packs his belongings and leaves the school, the pupils pursue him, begging him not to depart. They are upset by his departure, but they understand that they must pass their impending test to make him pleased. From that point forward, students study twice as much to demonstrate to the board that Henry is an excellent teacher. On the day of the examination, Jack and his classmates receive a text from Henry requesting them to gather at school 1 hour before the exam. When the youngsters gather, they discover that John Ying's plan is to keep them locked in the school so they can't make it into the exam hall on time. He's attempting this to teach Henry a lesson. A little later, Henry comes to school and learns about John Ying's plot. He frees the students and battles all of John Ying's allies to prevent them from injuring the children. They leave and immediately make their way back to the examination hall, where Henry attacks John Ying and others. When they are fighting, John Ying admits that he's the guy Henry has thrown water balloons at as a child. It comes out that since breaking his arm, he has been unable to compete in an important music competition. Since the incident, he hasn't played a piano and hates Henry for destroying his objective. They strive to acquire a knife. Finally, Henry approaches him with the intention of killing him, but fails. He goes away after apologizing for what he did as a child. Students arrive at the examination hall on time and perform well on the test. Flip to a few weeks afterward, they all passed with excellent scores. John Ying begins to play his piano again, but he still has a long way to go before he can match his previous level of proficiency. Bruce heals fast and promises to take the next year's entrance exam. The principal also feels overjoyed since the board chooses to award them a 20% bonus fund given that their kids performed extremely well on the admission exam. Henry returns to teaching and conducts the fire sprinkler technique on another group of students. We really hope you enjoyed today's recap of the movie Big Brother. Please leave a comment below on what you loved about the movie and why. Be sure to like the video and please don't forget to support our channel by subscribing so you don't miss any amazing content. Until next time, light, camera, action. We look forward to seeing you in our next video.